Imagine a criminal enterprise so powerful, governments are terrified to shut it down. An organization processing billions of dollars for the world's most ruthless drug cartels, moving money for terrorists, and helping wealthy elites hide fortunes. If this were a mafia family, the FBI would kick down the doors and throw everyone in federal prison. But this isn't the mafia. This is a bank. And not just any bank, but an institution so massive that if it were a country, its economic power would rank fifth in the entire world, right behind Germany. We are talking about HSBC. They are the ultimate untouchables. In the modern financial system, if you rob a bank for a few $1,000s, you spend decades behind bars. But if a bank launders billions for organizations that decapitate rivals and flood cities with narcotics, the bank doesn't go to jail. It pays a fine, writes it off as a business expense, and goes right back to work. The global economy is held hostage by a terrifying reality. Some institutions are simply too big to jail, effectively granting them a permanent license to commit crime. To understand how a global titan reached this level of unchecked power, you must look at its DNA. You have to go back to its birth, because HSBC wasn't just corrupted over time. It was born from one of the most destructive narcotics operations in human history. In the mid-19th century, the British Empire had a massive trade deficit with China. To balance the books, British merchants began illegally smuggling a highly addictive narcotic into China, opium, grown in their colonial holdings in India. The results were utterly devastating. Millions of citizens became severely addicted. When the Chinese government finally tried to stop this catastrophic epidemic, Britain went to war to protect its immensely profitable drug traffickers. This was the First Opium War, and Britain's overwhelming victory forced China to open its ports and cede the island of Hong Kong. It was in this hyper-lucrative environment, swimming in the staggering profits of a state-sponsored international drug trade, that a group of merchants decided they needed a local bank to finance their operations, manage their enormous cash flows, and facilitate international trade. In 1865, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation was officially founded. From day one, the institution was built directly upon the foundation of the opium trade. It was meticulously designed to move vast sums of money across borders with minimal friction, serving the precise interests of merchants running a massive transnational drug cartel. Fast forward a century and a half, and the names of the cartels have changed. The illicit substances have changed, but the underlying business model remains chillingly intact. By the 2000s, HSBC had expanded into a formidable global monolith, acquiring regional banks all over the world, including a strategic footprint in Mexico. Mexico at this time was turning into an active war zone. The Sinaloa cartel, led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, was generating cash at a rate that defied logic. The cartel's biggest problem wasn't producing the drugs. It was figuring out what to do with mountains of physical U.S. currency. They desperately needed to quietly integrate it into the global financial system to buy real estate, bribe politicians, and purchase military-grade weapons. Enter HSBC Mexico. The bank became the ultimate washing machine for cartel blood money. Cartel operatives weren't using sophisticated shell companies. They were literally walking directly into HSBC branches in Mexico, with custom-designed boxes built to fit precisely through the bank teller windows. These boxes were stuffed to the brim with hundreds of thousands of dollars in physical cash. At the height of this operation, cartels were dropping off so much illicit cash that HSBC Mexico had to continually export billions of physical U.S. dollars back to the United States. Bank executives knew exactly what was happening. Internal emails revealed that dedicated compliance officers were screaming into the void, warning superiors that the bank was functioning as the premier financial wing for ruthless drug lords. But the frantic warnings were completely ignored. The profits were simply too high to stop. The cartel connection was just the tip of the iceberg. While the Mexican branches were busy counting cartel cash, other vital divisions of HSBC were intentionally and systematically stripping data from wire transfers to deliberately hide the identities of clients in heavily sanctioned countries. They actively facilitated financial transactions for entities in Iran, Sudan, Libya, and Cuba. They were moving money for international banks directly linked to terrorist financing, effectively allowing rogue states and dangerous organizations to freely access the U.S. financial system. HSBC employees were given explicit instructions on how to alter transaction records, a highly illegal practice known as wire stripping, to ensure transactions would bypass automated compliance filters in the United States. They were essentially handing the worst actors on the global stage a VIP pass to the world's economy. Eventually, the sheer volume of illicit activity triggered massive investigations by various U.S. authorities, including the Department of Justice and the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. The resulting Senate report was a damning, exhaustive 300-page indictment of a global bank out of control. The public anxiously awaited the hammer to fall. Surely, for actively facilitating terrorism and laundering billions for murderous cartels, the top executives would face severe criminal charges. Surely, the bank would permanently lose its charter to operate in the United States. Instead, the world witnessed a stunning capitulation. In late 2012, the U.S. government announced a deferred prosecution agreement with HSBC. Not a single executive went to prison. No individuals faced criminal trials. The bank merely agreed to pay a fine of $1.9 billion. To an average working person, $1.9 billion sounds catastrophic. But to a behemoth like HSBC, it was the equivalent of about 5 weeks of their profit. It was a highly expensive speeding ticket, factored in as the cost of doing business. The official justification provided by the government was perhaps more terrifying than the crimes themselves. High-ranking officials openly admitted that prosecuting HSBC could have catastrophic consequences for the entire global financial system. The frightening argument was that if HSBC lost its U.S. banking license, the institution would collapse overnight, taking millions of innocent depositors and potentially the entire fragile global economy down with it. They were officially deemed too big to jail. This admission shattered the illusion of a fair justice system. It publicly confirmed that there are undeniably 2 tiers of justice. There is one strict set of rules for everyday citizens, and one entirely different set of rules for megacorporations. The modern Opium War isn't fought with gunboats on the Pearl River. It is fought quietly in air-conditioned boardrooms, through complex financial derivatives, and across encrypted digital networks. It is fought by executives in impeccably tailored suits who face absolutely no physical danger, yet whose calculated decisions enable horrific violence on a scale that warlords could only dream of. The dark legacy of HSBC is a stark reminder that when global capital becomes the ultimate authority, human morality becomes an optional luxury. We are left living in an unjust world where the most lucrative crimes are completely legal, as long as your bank is too big to fail, and importantly, too big to jail.